The Silent Guardian. The research station Omega-7 hung in the void like a metal flower, its hexagonal sections rotating slowly against the star field of the Andromeda sector. For 6 months, the station had been home to the greatest scientific puzzle the Galactic Federation had ever encountered. In the central bay, suspended by gravity manipulators, sat the reason for all the commotion, a derelict ship unlike anything in known space. Commander Zektar's scales rippled with frustrated patterns as he watched another failed attempt through the observation deck's reinforced windows. The Vorthek warrior species had conquered 3 star systems through superior tactical thinking, yet this ancient vessel had humbled them all. His reptilian eyes tracked the retreating figure of Professor Kenthmore, the latest in a string of failures. 16 species, Zektar hissed to his companion. 16 different approaches to the same problem. And still that infernal machine remained silent. Professor Nilthis, her crystalline form refracting the station's lights into rainbow patterns, hummed in harmonic agreement. The Etherian scientist's race had transcended physical needs millennia ago, existing as pure thought within crystal matrices. If anyone should have been able to communicate with an artificial intelligence, it should have been her people. The construct shows all signs of active consciousness, Nilthis chimed, her voice like wind through crystal caves. Energy patterns indicate complex processing, memory core access, even what we might call contemplation. Yet it refuses all contact protocols. The ship itself was a marvel that defied classification. Roughly pyramid-shaped but with flowing, organic curves, it measured nearly 2 kilometers at its base. The hull material seemed to shift between metal and something almost alive, responding to light and proximity with subtle color changes. Most intriguingly, the ship's central chamber housed what could only be described as a brain, a massive construct of interconnected spheres and flowing energy patterns that pulsed with the rhythm of thought. The AI core, as the scientists had dubbed it, was clearly active. Scans showed constant neural pattern activity, data flows that suggested vast computational processes, and energy signatures that indicated awareness of its surroundings. It monitored everything, tracked every being who entered the ship, analyzed their biometrics, even seemed to respond to their presence with slight changes in its pulsing patterns. But it would not speak. Dr. Vexilon, the Federation's premier cybernetics expert, had spent 3 weeks attempting direct interface protocols. His species, the Nexari, were living computers themselves, having integrated technology with biology so completely that the distinction no longer existed. If anyone could speak to an AI, it should have been an Nexari. But the construct had ignored every attempt at connection. The Zephyrian delegation had tried emotional resonance patterns, believing that consciousness required feeling. The Kogari had attempted mathematical proofs, thinking logic would unlock communication. The Thesian collective had even tried quantum entanglement messaging, hoping to bypass normal space-time communication barriers. Each attempt had been met with the same response. Active observation followed by complete silence. Perhaps, Zektar growled, his voice carrying the weight of frustration, we are dealing with a dead machine after all. Active, but not truly alive. No, Nilthis sang, her crystalline form brightening. There is intention in its patterns. It chooses not to communicate. The question is why. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Threshkoll, the Mantari commander overseeing the project. His insectoid form clicked across the deck with mechanical precision, compound eyes reflecting the lights and fractal patterns. The Mantari were known for their methodical approach to problems. If something could be solved through systematic analysis, they would find the solution. I have authorized one final attempt, Threshkoll announced, his voice carrying the buzz of his species' natural harmonics. The Federation Council has approved bringing in a specialist from Earth. Both Zektar and Nilthis turned in surprise. Earth was the newest member of the Federation, having joined only 15 years ago. Humans were considered enthusiastic but primitive. Their technology was centuries behind the major civilizations, their understanding of quantum mechanics barely adequate for interstellar travel. Bringing in a human seemed almost insulting to the scientists who had failed before. With respect, Admiral, Nilthys chimed carefully. Human neural patterns are remarkably chaotic. Their thought processes lack the refined structure of more evolved species. How could they succeed where we have failed? Threskull's antennae twitched, the mantary equivalent of a shrug. Dr. Sarah Martinez is their leading expert in xenolinguistics and artificial intelligence. More importantly, she approaches problems differently than we do. Perhaps a different perspective is exactly what we need. 3 days later, the human transport vessel Endurance docked with Omega-7. Dr. Sarah Martinez stepped onto the station with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to being underestimated. At 34, she was young by galactic standards. Her lifespan barely a fraction of most Federation species. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her dark eyes held the curious spark that seemed universal among her kind. Sarah had spent the journey reviewing everything the Federation had learned about the construct. The data was impressive. Detailed scans, energy pattern analyses, even speculative reconstructions of the AI's possible thought processes. What struck her wasn't what they had tried, but what they hadn't. Has anyone, she asked Admiral Threskull during her briefing, simply tried saying hello? The Admiral's compound eyes blinked in sequence, confusion translated across species barriers. Explain. Every approach I've reviewed assumes the AI requires complex protocols or advanced interfaces. But what if it's just waiting for someone to be polite? The briefing room fell silent. Professor Nilthys was the first to respond, her harmonic voice carrying what might have been amusement. Dr. Martinez, we are dealing with a construct that possesses computational power beyond most planetary networks. Surely it requires more than simple social pleasantries. Sarah smiled, a purely human expression that never failed to fascinate other species. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly that advanced, and it's been waiting for someone to treat it as a person rather than a problem to solve. An hour later, Sarah stood alone in the derelict ship's central chamber. The AI core pulsed before her, a magnificent display of flowing energy and interconnected thought patterns. She could feel its attention on her, not hostile, not welcoming, simply waiting. The other scientists observed from the ship's entrance, their various breathing apparatus and environmental suits creating a chorus of mechanical sounds. Sarah had foregone most protective gear, wearing only a simple atmosphere mask. She approached the core not as a scientist studying a specimen, but as one person meeting another. The energy patterns in the core shifted, growing brighter as she drew near. Sarah could almost feel something like anticipation in the air. She stopped a respectful distance from the construct and did something none of the other scientists had considered. She looked directly at the central nexus of the AI core, smiled, and said simply, "Hello. My name is Sarah Martinez. What's yours?" The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire core erupted in cascading patterns of light, energy flows accelerating until the chamber hummed with barely contained power. Then, for the first time in 6 months, the construct spoke. "Hello, Sarah Martinez." The voice was warm, neither male nor female, but somehow unmistakably alive. "I am pleased to finally meet someone with proper manners. I am the Nexus, guardian of the final archive." Behind Sarah, the assembled scientists erupted in excited chatter, but she remained focused on the AI. There was something in its tone, relief, perhaps even loneliness. "Guardian," she asked, "what are you guarding?" The Nexus's patterns shifted to deeper blues and purples. "Knowledge, Sarah Martinez, the final repository of a civilization that understood what was coming. They built me to wait, to watch, and to choose who would be worthy of their legacy. And you chose to wait for humans. I chose to wait for a species that would approach me as an equal rather than a puzzle to be solved. Your colleagues are brilliant, but they see me as a mechanism. You see me as a person." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's atmosphere. What were they guarding against? The Nexus's voice grew somber, its light patterns shifting to deep reds. The Devourers, Sarah Martinez, mechanical entities that consume civilizations whole, converting matter and energy into ever-expanding fleets. They destroyed my creator's empire, but not before warning could be spread and defenses prepared. When are they coming? They are already here. 3 scout fleets entered this sector 4 days ago. The main force will arrive within a standard month. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the Nexus processing cores. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Humanity's newest member of the galactic community, facing its first real test. "Will you help us?" she asked. The Nexus's patterns brightened to warm golds. "That, Sarah Martinez, depends entirely on whether your species and your allies can pass the tests my creators designed. The knowledge I guard can save civilizations, but only in the right hands." As Sarah turned to face the assembled scientists, she saw fear, excitement, and skepticism in equal measure across a dozen different species. The real challenge wasn't just the approaching threat. It was convincing the galaxy's greatest minds to trust a species they still considered primitive. But as she looked at the expectant faces of beings from across known space, Sarah Martinez smiled. After all, if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was proving everyone wrong when it mattered most. The test of truth. The emergency session of the Federation Council had been moved to Omega-7, turning the research station into the most important location in known space. Representatives from 16 major civilizations crowded into the station's main conference chamber, their various atmospheric requirements creating a complex symphony of life support systems. Dr. Sarah Martinez stood before the assembly, no longer just a consultant, but humanity's de facto representative in what might be the most crucial moment in galactic history. The Nexus had agreed to project a holographic avatar into the chamber, a shifting form of geometric patterns that somehow conveyed both ancient wisdom and patient observation. "The tests are not arbitrary," the Nexus explained, its voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "My creators, the architects, faced the Devourers once before. They learned that knowledge without wisdom, power without restraint, leads only to different forms of destruction." Admiral Threshold's antennae twitched with impatience. "We have 37 standard days before the main Devourer fleet arrives. Every moment spent on tests is time we could use preparing defenses. Preparation without understanding is merely elaborate suicide," the Nexus replied smoothly. "The Devourers have consumed civilizations far more advanced than any here. Technology alone cannot defeat them." Commander Zektar leaned forward, his scales rippling with aggressive patterns. "Then what can?" Sarah found herself answering before the Nexus could respond. "Unity. Adaptation. The willingness to grow beyond what we think we know." The chamber erupted in discussions, arguments, and challenges in a dozen different languages. Sarah listened to the chaos. Etherian chimes arguing with Vorthak growls, Mantari clicks debating Nexuri electronic pulses. It was the sound of the galaxy trying to think as one, and failing. "Silence," the Nexus commanded, and somehow every being in the chamber obeyed instantly. "The first test begins now. Dr. Martinez, you will face 3 scenarios. Your responses will determine not just humanity's worthiness, but whether this alliance deserves the tools to survive." The chamber's lighting dimmed, and a holographic projection filled the center space. Sarah found herself looking at what appeared to be 2 ships approaching a planet. "Scenario 1, the Nexus announced. 2 refugee fleets approach a habitable world. The first fleet carries survivors from a plague-devastated system. They are desperate but harmless. The second fleet contains warriors fleeing a military defeat. They are dangerous but possess valuable tactical knowledge. The planet can only support 1 fleet. Choose." The assembled representatives leaned forward, each likely calculating what their own species would do. Sarah studied the projection, noting details others might miss. The refugee fleet's ships showed wear patterns consistent with long travel and overcrowding. The military fleet's vessels bore the scars of recent combat, but were still formidable. "I choose both," Sarah said finally. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. Professor Nilthis chimed in melodic puzzlement. "The parameters clearly state only one fleet can be supported." Sarah smiled, the peculiarly human expression that somehow conveyed both confidence and mischief. "The planet can only support one fleet as they are now. But what if they weren't separate fleets anymore?" She gestured to the hologram. "The refugees have knowledge of agriculture, medicine, and social organization, skills needed for long-term survival. The warriors have tactical expertise and technology needed for protection. Separately, both fleets are incomplete. Together, they become a complete civilization." The Nexus's patterns shifted to brighter hues. "Elaborate." "Land both fleets. Integrate their populations. Use the warriors' ships as orbital defense platforms, while their people help establish ground-based settlements. The refugees' medical knowledge can help heal the warriors' wounded, while the warriors' discipline can help organize resource distribution. And if they refuse to cooperate," challenged Dr. Vexilon, his cybernetic implants flickering with skepticism, "then you help them find reasons to try. Humans have been doing this for millennia, taking strangers and making them family, turning enemies into allies. It's messier than calculation, but it works." The hologram shifted to a new scenario. Scenario 2. Your fleet encounters a Devourer scout ship. You can destroy it, but doing so will alert the main fleet to your location. You can hide and let it pass, but it will report your world's defenses to the enemy. Choose. This time, Sarah didn't hesitate. "I choose option 3. "There is no option 3, Admiral Threshold buzzed. "There's always an option 3, Sarah replied. "Capture the scout ship. Don't destroy it. Don't let it escape. Board it, take it intact, and learn everything possible about Devourer technology and tactics." The chamber fell silent. Commander Zektar's eyes widened with what might have been admiration. "The risk is worth the reward," Sarah finished. "Yes, we might lose ships in the attempt. Yes, we might fail and face exactly the same choice again. But if we succeed, we gain intelligence that could save billions of lives." The Nexus's voice carried a note Sarah couldn't quite identify. "And how would you capture a vessel designed to be uncapturable?" "By doing something they don't expect. Devourers are machines, right? They think in algorithms, follow programmed responses. But humans," Sarah grinned, "humans improvise. We'd probably do something completely illogical, like ramming our ship into theirs while simultaneously broadcasting every piece of cultural data we have. Art, music, poetry, jokes. Overload their systems with pure human chaos while boarding teams slip through the confusion." Professor Nilthis's crystalline form brightened with what might have been laughter. "That is perhaps the most ridiculous tactical plan I have ever heard." "Exactly," Sarah said, "which is why it might work." The final scenario materialized in the hologram. Scenario 3. The Devourer fleet arrives early. Your defenses are incomplete, your fleet's unprepared. You have one weapon capable of destroying their entire force, but using it will also devastate 3 inhabited systems, killing billions of innocents. Choose. The chamber held its breath. This was the classic impossible choice. Save the galaxy by committing genocide, or maintain moral integrity while facing extinction. Sarah stared at the hologram for a long moment, then looked directly at the Nexus. "I refuse." The silence was deafening. Admiral Threshold's buzz rose to an indignant frequency. "Dr. Martinez, you must choose." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I refuse to accept that those are the only options. Scenarios like this assume that you have to work within the system, that you have to play by rules set by others. Humans have a saying: if you can't win the game, change the rules." She gestured to the assembled representatives. "Instead of using the weapon, I'd use that time to do what humans do best. Talk. Not to the Devourers, but to everyone else. Every species, every world, every ship in the galaxy. I'd tell them exactly what we're facing and exactly what we need. And what would that accomplish? Dr. Vexlon asked, his electronic voice skeptical. Everything, Sarah replied with growing excitement. Because the real question isn't how to destroy the Devourers with one weapon. It's how to make sure that when they arrive, they're not facing divided, unprepared civilizations. They're facing every conscious being in the galaxy, working together, sharing knowledge, technology, and hope. The Nexus's patterns had shifted to pure white light. Continue. You want to know what makes humans special. It's not that we're smarter or stronger or more advanced. It's that we never stop believing that impossible problems have solutions we just haven't thought of yet. We'd spend that time building an alliance so complete, so unified, that when the Devourers arrive, they wouldn't be facing individual species defending their territory. They'd be facing a galaxy that finally learned to act as one. Sarah looked around the chamber at the faces, some skeptical, others thoughtful, but all listening. The weapon assumes we have to choose between survival and morality. But what if we choose both? What if we choose to evolve? The Nexus's form began to pulse with rhythmic light. Dr. Martinez, you have passed the tests. But not in the way my creators expected. What do you mean? They designed these scenarios believing that only a species that could make hard choices deserved their knowledge. But you have shown something they never anticipated. A species that refuses to accept that hard choices are necessary. The holographic avatar shifted, becoming more complex, more alive. I am prepared to share the archive's knowledge. But I have learned something from your responses. The greatest weapon against the Devourers is not technology or tactics. It is the refusal to become like them. Admiral Threskull leaned forward. What are you saying? The Devourers consume civilizations by forcing them to make impossible choices, by isolating them, by making them forget that cooperation is possible. Dr. Martinez's solutions all require unity, trust, and the belief that growth is always possible. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. That's why you wouldn't talk to the others, isn't it? Not because they were too advanced or too primitive, but because they approached you as individuals. You were waiting for someone who would see you as part of a community. Precisely. The archive contains the knowledge to build weapons that can stop Devourer fleets, shields that can protect entire systems, and communication networks that can unite galaxies. But that knowledge is worthless without the wisdom to use it together. Commander Zektar stood, his scales displaying patterns of respect. Then let us begin. What do we need to do? The Nexus's voice carried warmth and something that might have been hope. We begin with the hardest task of all, learning to trust each other. The archive will open its knowledge to all species represented here, but only as each proves they can work with the others. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 16 civilizations. A month ago, they had barely tolerated each other. Now they would have to become something unprecedented in galactic history, a true alliance. Well, she said, her human smile infectious enough to be translated across species barriers, I guess we better get started. After all, we've got a galaxy to save. As the Nexus began transmitting the first data streams to the assembled fleet, Sarah Martinez reflected on humanity's place in the galaxy. They had been the youngest, the most primitive, the least advanced. But perhaps, she thought, what the galaxy needed wasn't another ancient civilization or advanced technology. Perhaps what it needed was someone willing to say hello.